We are talking about a major winter storm potential later in January, but before then, we have a Arctic blast that will be moving in, and after the winter storm potential, we also have an Arctic blast. So we have two of those moving in here in late January, and we're going to get you to everything that you need to know in this video. So subscribe to the channel, follow along with all of my daily updates here, and I do produce 2 videos a day sometimes on this channel, one in the late morning, early afternoon, one in the mid-evening. So make sure, again, you're subscribed to the channel, turn on post notifications so you are notified for when I do post my videos. Like the video by giving it a thumbs up and share this video on social media. Let's look here at the weather alerts across the United States here. We have winter weather advisories across parts of eastern North Dakota, northern Minnesota, north Wisconsin, and the UP of Michigan. Also winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings from Montana down here into Wyoming. And that's where the snowfall resides as we go into the afternoon. Notice we have some lake effect snow over here and some lighter snow into lower Michigan, even northern Indiana. That's going to continue to fly this afternoon. We also have higher elevation snows back to the west, northern Rockies, Montana, down into the northern parts of Wyoming. And so we have some rain showers, not a big deal, but some rain down into portions of Louisiana and Mississippi. And largely all 3 of those areas will be seeing the same precipitation going into the evening and into the overnight hours, although the rainfall does become a little bit more widespread across Alabama, southwest Georgia, and northwest Florida. Let's look at the snowfall going through Monday on January 13th. Could be seeing a few inches up here into the upper peninsula of Michigan, northwestern lower Michigan, or northern Wisconsin here. We could be seeing 2 to as much as 4 inches worth of accumulating snow through your Monday morning time frame. That could lead to a little bit of minor travel problems up here across the upper Great Lakes region and the upper Midwest going through your Monday morning commute. So just make sure to take it slow out on those roadways. To the south, we got all liquid. That's all rainfall here near the Gulf Coast, New Orleans, all the way up here into southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, northwest Florida, on average around 3/4 of an inch to an inch of rain. Some areas may see just a little bit over an inch of rain. The most prime candidate for that would be New Orleans as we go into Monday, January 13th. As we go into this upcoming week, we're going to see our first Arctic blast of 2. So here's the first one. On Monday, January 13th, we're going to see that Arctic air really start to lock in across the central and the eastern U.S., and that really starts to bottom our air temperatures out across the east on Wednesday. And then looking at Friday, we have return flow out of the west as we have a collapsing ridge from Alaska, and that will bring some Pacific air, and it's mild air across the country as we go into Friday, January 17th. Let's look here as the bottom drops out Wednesday morning. Here are your low temperatures, and we're going to be below 0 across a large chunk of the Midwest and the Ohio Valley here. Some of our snowpack on the ground here in the Ohio Valley will help to enhance some of these colder temperatures. So we could be pressing up to -8 in Indianapolis, maybe 3 degrees above 0 in Chicago Wednesday morning, 5 above 0 in Milwaukee, and 3 below here in Duluth, Minnesota. And then when you factor in just a slight breeze out there, here are your wind chills. We're down to around -10, -15, perhaps even -20 here, below 0 Fahrenheit across the Ohio Valley, getting into parts of the Midwest, the upper Midwest, and then look at that, southeastern Canada, -25 in parts of Ontario and Quebec. So definitely going to be very cold there as the bottom drops out Wednesday morning. Let's look at some analogs for early January, and it's not really that uncommon that we see this, but it does happen every few years. Going back to early January of 2014, it did happen as well. Notice how strong the cold air was in the Midwest, a little bit warmer out across the West Coast. Early January 1999, a little bit more of an extreme scenario that happened, even colder air than what we're seeing in early January here this year, but you definitely get the idea. Warmer out west, very cold here in the upper Midwest, down in the Ohio Valley. Early January 1996, maybe not as cold, but more cold for the Northeast, but you notice here the east is cold, west is warm. Early January 1988 was a very extreme example. Actually, the west was trending below normal, and look how below normal we are in the central and eastern U.S. in 1988. So definitely it happens, but every few years. And let's look here at a precipitation anomaly as we go through the next week here between Monday, January 13th and the 17th. Notice it's drier across the east, a little bit wetter off here across the middle of the country, but really seeing that active storm track push further north into Canada. And that's where the Clipper systems and snowfall will reside through next week. Let's walk you through it here. Monday the 13th. This is tomorrow. We got a Clipper system, some lake effect snow up here into the upper Great Lakes, a little bit of some unsettled rainfall down here into Florida, Georgia, and also Alabama. Going into Tuesday, that Clipper system and lake effect snow here will continue across the lakes. South Florida may have a couple of showers. Other than that, very quiet across the country, just cold. And as we go into Wednesday, same thing. We got a stronger low, 993 millibars up here in northeast Manitoba near the Hudson Bay. That could bring some snowfall into Manitoba and western Ontario. Thursday, again, that moves off into Quebec. We got another Clipper system behind that here in Alberta and Saskatchewan. But notice the lower 48 here. Thursday, we're seeing dry weather, cold as well. And then as we go into Friday, maybe a little bit further south of a storm track, getting close to the United States, maybe northern Minnesota, North Dakota, Montana, seeing some snow. Other than that, the heaviest will stay over in the Canadian side on Ontario into Manitoba and Quebec as we go into Friday, January 17th. Notice again, here's the snowfall accumulation through the week, Monday the 13th through Friday the 17th. Notice this further to the north, and we could see a few inches up here in Canada from British Columbia all the way east here across the southern provinces to eastern portions of Canada and Quebec. The heaviest by far will be all the way up here in Alaska, Yukon, and northwestern British Columbia. That's where we could see a few feet of snow as we go through the new week here. Let's look here at the third week of January. This is Friday, January 17th through the 24th. The following Friday, ridge builds in Alaska and western Canada. Trough here is diving down from Canada into the northern U.S., and this is going to dislodge some very cold air as we go into that 17th through the 24th of January timeframe, and it takes up residence across a large chunk of the lower 48. To see any above normal temperatures, you have to go to South Florida at this point to see that. Let's look at the storm track here. We got the polar jet to the north, dropping all that cold air further to the south. We got the subtropical jet to the south. Where they meet up is key. That's what we call phasing. And when you see that, that's where we could have some bigger storms. And this actually would lead to the potential for bigger snowstorms across the eastern and the southeastern U.S. in this pattern between the 17th and the 24th time frame, which will leave the Midwest cold but mostly dry. And you can see the Climate Prediction Center, the experts over there, are agreeing with me that between the 18th, 20th, and we could extend this even out to the 24th, that the active weather for heavy snow will be across the east and towards the south here, and the Midwest, upper Midwest region is just colder and drier. And notice where we see the warm side of the system, heavier rains, a moderate risk for that along the Gulf Coast states from Louisiana east to Georgia and Florida. Something to keep an eye on here with some heavier rain, maybe even some severe weather at times. Let's look here at the last week of January, the 24th through the 31st, and you can see we back up the pattern to the west a little bit. We got a ridge over here in Alaska, a trough building a little bit further west towards the northwest U.S. and southwest Canada, and this is very important because we're also going to have a ridge developing in the east and southeast U.S., which will warm us up a little bit across the south and up the eastern seaboard. And notice the pattern kind of just backs up. The coldest of the temperatures will move to the west toward the Pacific Northwest and southwestern Canada. And we see still cold temperatures below normal, but not as brutally cold in the last week of January in the east. And that will back up the pattern with our jet stream. You see the polar jet here a little bit further west, and the phasing of the polar jet and the subtropical jet to the south phasing near the Great Lakes or the Midwest, which would bring a better opportunity for snow to the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and the Midwest. So something to keep an eye on there. So here's the snowfall accumulation potential as we go between the 24th and 31st of the month. Notice more opportunities for the upper Midwest, an area that has been largely missed by snow, really even any snowstorms here this year. Could get in on some snowfall as we go in the last week of January, and then more heavy mountain snow as that cold air rushes in. We have a lot more storms with that subtropical jet, so the Sierra is probably getting in more snow, the Rockies, and even the Cascades up here in the Pacific Northwest as well. And then the heavy rainfall maybe moving a little bit further off to the north. It's not as cold, but still cold in the east, so we could have some rainfall, maybe some cold rains there in the lower Ohio River Valley toward the Mid-Atlantic, up the I-95 corridor as we go in the last week of January. Thank you for following along and subscribing to my channel, folks. I do appreciate it. If you're new here, make sure to do so. Make sure to subscribe down below and follow me for the latest updates here as we walk you through this cold but snowy pattern through the rest of January. Like the video by giving it a thumbs up down below, and of course, share this video with friends, family, and on social media. Leave any comments, questions, concerns below as well. We'll get to those after the video, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their weekend out there.